Okay, so what we'll start doing now is we'll just go through the presentation slide by slide. So we will simulate a actual pitch book presentation as if I was the head consultant or lead deal maker in the transaction, and you'll be in the seat of the client. So typically, the first slide would be the disclaimer. So you wouldn't necessarily go through the disclaimer during the presentation with the client. So I'm just going to go through it now line by line, just to highlight the salient features of the disclaimer, and you can adapt this disclaimer for the uses of your own company, and you can adapt it and amend it where necessary. So let's just go through it. As I mentioned again, typically you wouldn't do this in front of the client, but they would be given this disclaimer beforehand, and it's just to protect your organization against certain risks that we'll see as we go through it. So I'll just go through it. This presentation was prepared exclusively for the benefit and internal use of ABC Mining Limited, that's the client, including its subsidiaries, together referred to as the company. So what we do here is if we wish to provide services to ABC Mining or any other company that falls within the group structure of the company, we just include it here as the subsidiaries. And as well from a legal perspective, um, any organization that is linked to the entire company structure is then bound by this confidentiality agreement or the disclaimer, the clauses that are stipulated in the disclaimer or the content of the disclaimer. So, including its subsidiaries, together referred to as the company, to whom it is directly addressed and delivered to in order to assist the company in evaluating on a preliminary basis the feasibility of potential transactions discussed herein. So, just a couple of things. Whenever you define a term, you'll notice that when we use it subsequently, when we put it in a capital letter, then we refer to how it was originally defined. So, the company refers to ABC Mining and all its subsidiaries. And another thing here is evaluating on a preliminary basis, just to make sure that this is just a preliminary or introductory presentation, that this is not a firm commitment to provide any services. So that's just the nuance there with the word preliminary. This presentation is for discussion purposes only. This just re-emphasizes that point. And does not constitute any offer or agreement to provide any product or services to the company. The financial arrangements outlined herein are for the sole use and benefit of the company, to whom it is submitted in good faith, and who is deemed to have accepted responsibility for ensuring the confidentiality of this document. So, in other words, this is just saying that this presentation is for the sole use of the company. So, it's not intended for the company to take this presentation and replicate it and present the findings of this presentation to its clients, for instance. So this presentation was only prepared for the sole use of the company and not for any other person that the company would subsequently wish to give this presentation to. And we'll get down to more nuances around that point later. So it's submitted to the company in good faith, and the company is deemed to have accepted responsibility for ensuring the confidentiality of this document. So this document would contain some intellectual property from the Tauro Group, which is the company that I work for. And what you want to make sure the client understands is that the intellectual property contained in this presentation is not meant for the consumption of any external third parties. It was submitted to the company and for the sole benefit of the company. Neither this presentation nor any of its contents may be disclosed or used for any other purpose without the prior written consent of the Tauro Group, so that just emphasizes that point. The information in this presentation is based upon management forecasts and information supplied to us by the company and reflects prevailing market conditions and the economic views of the Tauro Group as of this date, all of which are subject to change. This is quite important because these presentations are not evergreen, especially in today's changing world where, I mean, it's anybody's guess what the markets will do tomorrow. So the findings of this presentation are not evergreen. And if we've concluded that one course of action is the best course of action, and 2 months later the client comes back to us and wants to implement that strategy, this just makes us well aware that, or makes the client well aware that, the markets could change in the interim period. And whatever conclusions that we've come to today might not be valid in a month's time or 2 months' time. The discussions and transactions contemplated herein are purely for illustrative purposes and would only be definitive subject to following thorough due diligence processes typical for transactions of this nature. I think this is the most important line here. Basically, what you want to ensure that you were given, here we have management forecasts and information that was supplied to us by the company. But we haven't done any detailed due diligence on those models or on those forecasts. Assuming that the client's forecasts are accurate and correct, these are our recommendations. But we can't make definitive recommendations until we've firmed up on the numbers or firmed up on the information that's contained in those forecasts and in the management reports. So this is just making the client well aware of that it's only definitive, our advice, following thorough due diligence, typical of transactions of this nature.